15.
Let's invert this. Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this book, White Sands, and I guess the talk is going to be about fiction and fact, appearance and reality, and how they tend to merge into each other. The fact of the matter is that this book, White Sands, until right at the last moment, was going to have a very different title. I was absolutely determined, in the face of fierce opposition from my publisher, that it would be called not White Sands, which is a nice, catchy, easy to remember title. I wanted it to be called Where Do We Come From, What Are We, and Where Are We Going, which, as many of you will know, is the title of a Gauguin painting, this one. And I like this title for several reasons, partly because it provided a link with that other travel book that I'd done, which had a very long title. And I liked the way that the book sort of dealt with some of those questions that Gauguin raises in that painting. But the thing about travel books is that, I mean, often they're a rather homely kind of, there's a really well-established form for a travel book. You know, you either go in the footsteps of somebody or you go around the world on a ludicrously inappropriate form of transport, like all over South America on a pogo stick or something like that. So this is a book which is a travel book, partly because it departs from the idea of the travel book template. Before I was very keen to write about Gauguin, and before I went to Tahiti, I went to Boston to see this painting, and I was very disappointed. Disappointment, I should add, is one of the key themes of the book. I was very disappointed to learn that the painting was out on loan. And if you like, this is one of the rules of museum going, isn't it? If you're in a city with just one day to spare, you can guarantee that will be the one day of the week that the museum is closed. Anyway, that was disappointing, but it was more than compensated for by the way that I came across this painting by somebody that I'd be pretty sure that you've not heard of. I certainly haven't. His name is Elihu Vedder, and this seemed to me one of the most descriptive paintings I'd ever seen in terms of what it is that we go to places for. You know, what is it? We're wanting a place to impart its secret to us. Anyway, I went to Tahiti and it didn't work out very well. It was a stupid trip to have gone because I didn't just want to go to French Polynesia. I wanted to enter a Gauguin painting. And it was impossible to do that. But although there was nothing Gauguin-esque, if you like, left in Tahiti anymore, I did come across something really fantastic. I came across this football pitch and some old goalposts, which really seemed to make the whole trip worthwhile, even though you don't need me to tell you that you don't really need to go all the way around the world to find some goalposts. But I came across some goalposts which put me in mind of another work of art by the great Italian photographer Luigi Ghiri. And it seemed to me that this football pitch that I saw and this photograph, they were emblematic as well, because, I mean, I thought of this photograph and I'd seen it before. I'd actually seen it here on the cover of this great album, which some of you will know, Playing by Old and New Dreams. That is to say, the band formed of old Ornette Coleman partners, so Don Cherry, Charlie Hayden play on it. And it was a weird thing because the football pitch put me in mind of the Ghiri picture, which reminded me of where I'd first seen the Ghiri picture on this album cover. And if we go back, it seems to me so exemplary, really. It's an incredible picture. It's showing a goal. It's showing a goal, but there's no real. You don't really get the sense that anyone is desperate to get the ball in the net, as is happening as we speak. I'm conscious of that. it seemed to me so incredibly simple and mysterious, and it reminded me of that great line by, one of the greatest photographers, I think, of the 20th century, Gary Winogrand, who said, "There is nothing as mysterious as a fact clearly stated." Anyway, so they kept on at me, the publisher, to change the title from the Gauguin, that long Gauguin thing, to a simpler thing, and I duly did change it to White Sands. Have we run out of battery power? There we are. Good. There's a bit of power there. So I came to my senses, realized it was a ludicrous title, and that the argument that I'd had when they said nobody will remember the title, and I'd said to them, yeah, well, of course, that's a good thing, because they'll go into a store and ask for that book with the title they can't remember. But obviously, it's much better to have this short title, White Sands. And it turns out that, as is the case with many places that we go to, I'd first seen white sands in a photograph taken by none other than the great Gary Winogrand. And it seems to me this is an emblematic picture, and the story White Sands is at the heart of the collection, and it is also emblematic because in that story we pick up a hitchhiker. My wife and I were in New Mexico, and it's all nice, because it's great picking up hitchhikers. And then we see a sign which says, "Notice, do not pick up hitchhikers. Detention facilities in area." And of course, that changes the vibe in the car quite a lot. But the thing is that, in a way, that's emblematic because this is a collection of pieces. It's being published as non-fiction. But in a way, I don't like the way that the signs on a book, signs like "do not pick up hitchhikers," tell you what the hitchhiker's like. He might just be a guy who happens to have chosen a really stupid spot to hitchhike. And I sort of don't like the way that so many of the signs on books saying memoir, fiction, non-fiction, or whatever, tell you how to read the experience that you're having. Anyway, fiction or non-fiction? Well, a grad student of mine from Iowa sent me this picture, and he said that, in his role as amateur fact checker, this bit he was able to check out. But the thing is, this story, which has a sort of narrative, then it stops being a proper story because it then becomes a discussion of these photographs by Taryn Simon, photographs from the Innocence Project, where she photographs people in America who've served parts of their unbelievably long sentences. Often in America, you can get sentenced to something like 600 years, just in case, just to make sure you don't get out. Anyway, certain prisoners won the right to DNA testing, and the tests proved that they couldn't have done the thing that they were accused of doing. Not just that there was an element of doubt, but it was actually physically impossible. So the story turns into a discussion of somebody like this. Stories are journeys, obviously. And as you go into White Sands, you're on a road, and a road, of course, is like a kind of narrative. And it's, I see this picture as being emblematic of that kind of two-lane blacktop idea of narrative. But then what happens as you get closer to the park is that the sand starts drifting, the sand which actually looks incredibly like snow, by the way. The sand starts drifting onto the road, so the road starts becoming sort of quite difficult to distinguish from that which is not road, until at the end, although you've still got that vehicle of narrative, the car, the road completely dissolves into this gleaming, mysterious emptiness of the desert. In other words, the borders have completely dissolved. There's another, I'm sorry, the clicker has now become incredibly responsive. There's another story next in the book where I describe what's happening of an evening. And of course, I'm of this age where I think there's nothing more moronic than the way that young people are always using their phones to take pictures of a good time and never remembering the magic of it. But one person in our group took some pictures, and he sort of conveyed absolutely the sort of romantic atmosphere in this. And I just so love this picture, the way that I see that guy as sort of about to fall in love with this woman, who was introduced to me in a rather strange way. She was introduced as the sister of another woman in the group. And I said, oh, that's odd. You don't look at all alike. And then it was explained, oh, that's because she is cousin sister. So another sort of strange thing about what is the reality and what is the fiction. At one point in the story, a photograph is taken of the narrator and one of the women in the group, and as the picture's taken, she sort of dips behind his back to try to retrieve a bag that's fallen. There's no photograph of that, possibly because it didn't happen. That will become significant. We move on now to a picture of the Spiral Jetty, which some of you will have visited, built by Robert Smithson. But the thing about it is that when Smithson built it, water levels were unusually low. And so a few years after it was built, it disappeared completely. But this didn't stop people going to visit this sort of holy grail of land art, because they knew that there, invisible, was this wonderful thing. I visited it when it had re-emerged after 20 years beneath the waves. Proves I was there. I also go to the lightning field. The great thing about the key thing about the lightning field you have to bear in mind is that it's very vulgar to expect any lightning, although clearly there was some lightning there once. I was there. This was a piece first published in the New Yorker, and it had to be subjected to their famous thing of fact-checking. And weirdly, one of the people I was with was a fact-checker at the New Yorker. Anyway, and I described one of the people there as short, and of course they had to get in touch with him, but they didn't say to him, "Are you short?" because that's famously subjective. They said to him, "How tall are you?" And he replied, 5'5". They then consulted the New Yorker guide to usage and decided, yes, he was indeed short. And, what we go to these places for? Well, we go to hear what these places are saying. Is it a truth? Is it a riddle? Is it fiction? It depends. And these places are constantly coming into existence. Here's a picture of a nice beach in Thailand, taking a picture of it. What's the significance of it? Well, the significance of it is perhaps changed once you know that they're taking the picture of the exact spot where those two British backpackers were murdered. So, and if you were there and you weren't aware of that, would you sense anything vibrationally? I don't know. Here's another site, another place that I went to because I first saw it on an Arden cover. This is the cover of Don Cherry's Great Arden Brown Rice. In the background, there's the Watts Towers, which I write about because my wife and I were living in Los Angeles, and we went on these kind of pilgrimage sites to famous places. So we went on a pilgrimage here, of course. 316 South Kenter Avenue. To another audience, I'd probably have to explain what the significance of 316 South Kenter Avenue, but I know you all know who lived there. For those few who don't, it's because he lived there, Theodore Adorno, who wrote Minima Moralia while living in Los Angeles during the Second World War. Yeah, that's my sort of. Actually, I sort of did this. I turned a sort of normal positive photograph of a Los Angeles street scene into a kind of negative. So it was a kind of negative dialectic, if you want, a la Adorno. Okay, just to finish up, you'll remember that I spoke about that story that takes place in Beijing after we've been to the Forbidden City. We're in that rooftop bar, and I didn't have a photograph to sort of show that as this woman and I were having our picture taken, she sort of dipped behind my back, I say, to retrieve a bag that she'd dropped. But I do have evidence of a kind. It just happens that it's from Egypt. And in Luxor, I came across this incredible sort of statue, which, as you can see, it's a nice sort of couple posing rather formally. She has been damaged by time. But the strange thing is, if you move just fractionally, something very strange happens. This thing of stone, this thing which is the fact of the stone, comes alive and moves. And it turns out that she sort of dips behind his back because she's dropped something many, many thousands of years ago, but it's still alive in the present. So thank you very much.